Hello, hello, and welcome or welcome back to the Curious Coaches Lemonade Stand. With your host, yours truly, Dr. Gena. I'm here with you to celebrate this amazing community virtual third spot where you can drop by, get something refreshing, something zingy and lemony fresh, where we sip, squeeze, and savor with style. If this is your first time stopping by, welcome. Hope you'll keep on joining us. We meet here on average about every 2 weeks or so. Sometimes I'll do solo pods, but sometimes, like today, I am blessed with an amazing guest to have a great conversation that is sure to give you some really cool insights and make you say, hmm. So, no further ado, I would love to welcome Starrlee to our studio today. Starrlee, thank you so much for being with us. And I'll hand over to you to tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here and to have this opportunity to chat. My name is Starrlee DeGrace. I am a member of the Chippewa of Georgina Island First Nation. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Today I happen to be wearing dark colored turtleneck, sweater weather for the win, white and pearl earrings, dark framed glasses. And if you questioned my husband or not, I'm about 5'6" if you were to see me in person. I am thrilled that I have the opportunity to connect with you today. I have been in the D&I space, but by day I am in the talent space, making differences and creating spaces for Indigenous talent across the country.
Fantastic. And I've got to say, Starlee and I met at an amazing DEI dinner, I believe it was, and it was almost exactly a year ago. I think it was last November that we met, right?
It was. You're absolutely right. Sweater weather.
Yeah. And I had the blessing of having to come in and find that the seat next to Starlee was the empty one at the table. So, my lucky day, I got to meet this fantastic and amazing lady. And I'm so pleased to be here with her today to chat about something that is very near and dear to both of our hearts, a three-letter word that means so much, and it is joy. What an important time of year, I think, too, to talk about it. Harvest season, moving into the winter, taking all those good summer memories, thinking about the great ones you're going to make for holidays or snuggly, cozy times coming up. So let's talk about joy. When you think of this topic, Starley, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, honestly, I think that the my perception of joy has changed as I've gotten older. I think that I once thought it was happiness and it was a destination, and happiness and joy were the same thing. Now I have a bit of a different lens. And so I think about as experiences. It's not really the destination, but really the journey. And it's all about mindset. So, regardless of what happens to be going on around me, around us, you
Mhm.
can always find a piece of joy in that moment, perspective. And so I think that that's probably the biggest difference from my younger self to now is when I think about joy, I think less about happiness and more about the experience or the moment.
Hmm, I can agree with that. I definitely would have conflated the 2, and when I'm thinking I was gonna say my younger self would, I'm like, my younger self by maybe a couple years would have conflated the 2. It's not like I figured that out a whole long time ago. I love that you call it out as, a journey and a perspective. Like, there's a few words there that are really resonating for me. So I'd love to start with that concept of a journey, especially because the auspices under which we met was at a DEI dinner, which the word journey often gets thrown into that too, to talk about it as opposed to an end goal. So how do you envision joy being a journey, and how's that, distinctly separate from happiness?
Absolutely. So I will just give this year as a perfect example. So there's a lot of things happening in the world. In my personal life, I have shared on in the ecos that I lost my mother at the beginning of this year, and that was a very challenging time in my life. And in those moments, it's really easy to find darkness um, and the negative components of all of that time. But what I found was, yes, there was grief, but in those moments of community and outreach and people reaching out to me who maybe I hadn't spoken to in a couple of years that were like, I'm sorry. And so that it created a connection that
Right.
I might not have reached out to that person for the next who knows how many years.
Yeah.
It brought my family together. It created a perspective about, what I need to do to prepare for the next thing. So that preparation of preparing for the worst, hoping for the best, that larger picture. It also allowed me to really build relationships with people by sharing my story openly. And so that allowed us to share my story, but then have people reach out to say, I'm also going through that story. And so creating a community that wasn't left in silence about and grieving alone, but we got to celebrate the lives of our loved ones who have, left a mark on us. And so when I think about that, when I think about joy pre my mother's passing, it was about that family time. But now she touches my world and my life in a completely different way. And I speak more about her honestly on a day to day basis now, intentionally. And so I have the opportunity to help others. And so I think that that joy is an extension, it grows, it changes. And so I think that that's when I think about that journey. It is all about those little micro moments that you have a decision. Am I going to take the negative road or am I going to choose joy?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's so rich what you just shared there, Starly. There's so many things threads I want to pick up on there. The fact that you're actually, positioning the joy journey in relationship to an event that was filled with grief. To me, really recognizing the agency of choosing joy. There's an intentionality that's very implicit in using that to reach out, to build rapport, to, as you said, build community. And I think that's an incredibly empowering thing to think about joy as a choice, because I think a lot of times happiness, it's like happenstance. Were there happy events? Am I happy today? Well, I don't know what happened. It's kind of very externalized. And this sounds like something that even in your darkest hour, you have a choice that you can make about that. And to me, that's an incredibly different place to be than waiting for happiness to happen.
Exactly. And actually, if I give another example, Gina, about the so in my day to day, I'm helping career job seekers identify their next role or their next dream, right? They're pursuing their next dream. This is a very challenging market. There are a number of things happening. And so it's really easy to get down a path of I'm not getting the callbacks. I'm not getting the job offers. I'm not getting and you get into this mindset that you are not enough.
Yeah.
But instead, I encourage, and actually, I shared a post recently about it, about really choosing that mindset in those moments to say, okay, well, it's not the time. This is not the place. What am I doing in the moment to prepare myself for that moment of happiness? But how am I going to choose joy in while I'm going from here to there? And so that
Yeah.
could look like maybe it's your health. Maybe it is your additional learning. Maybe it's connecting with somebody that you haven't connected with in a couple of years because they have a skill or another connection to then connect you to that will lead you your uh, to your next role. And so taking those no's and that negative sentiment and thinking about, okay, I have no control over those things that are happening. What I can control is how I feel and what I'm going to do with those things. And so
Yeah.
I'm really encouraging people in this time when it's really easy to get discouraged to choose joy and to think about what are they doing in this moment between now and a moment of happiness.
Yeah. I love that you give that as a second example, because as different, as disparate as those examples may seem, I see some important commonalities. That choice for joy in a dark time is definitely a big one. And also in both of those, there was an opening as opposed to a shutting down and imploding, which I know when I've been in grief over a loved one's death, when I've been, struggling to find my next job or figure out my next career move, that is a very tempting and almost likely rabbit hole to fall down, to just implode and go down that darkness and get stuck, really stuck and stagnant in there. And what you're proposing is making that intentional choice to instead open up to relationships, whether new, whether rekindling old ones, to opportunities, to building instead of crumbling. And I think that's so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that those relationships, I think that I was reading in preparation for our conversation today because I was really hoping we were going to talk about joy. I was thinking about um, I was thinking about the stats and what causes people to choose joy, and what are the happiest places to be. There were some stats about the happiest countries. For reference, Canada is number 16th in the happiness report that came out last year. But when I was reading some of the statistics and the data around joy and happiness, it really talked about connection, that it is really about those fundamental relationships and not only what's happening in your immediate circle, what's going on around you, but what is feeding your uh, your emotional state. That could be media, that could be
Yes.
social media,
Huge.
and I know that you and I have talked about the highlight reel, which is social media, and how we do this comparison. And not to be too cliche about this, but comparison
The thief of joy.
is a thief of joy, right? And so we think about what somebody is putting out there, and we think that that is what we need to be when we just need to look inside. And so I was thinking about this data that I was reading, thinking about how um, if we just blocked out those external noises and really thought about what internally, what and making those connections intentional, I think that we'd be so much happier speaking to people. I know that my bucket is filled when you and I have conversations,
Same.
deep-hearted conversations, and I think that most people feel that way when they are connected to others that think similarly or have a connection point, maybe even a differing opinion about
Yes,
something, to have a strong,
agree.
meaningful debate.
Yeah, because connection can be through debate as well. I
Absolutely. Respectful debate.
mhm. I think that's actually needed. That's almost a bomb that can create some joy in today's world when you look at what's going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so to go back to my original comment is just thinking about those relationships and the data that supports. It is really what surrounds you, what's happening in the world can really impact how you feel and experience joy. And I think that there's a number of things that are happening in the world. Without getting into, I don't need to list them all.
Mhm.
Everyone knows what's happening in the world, and though that sentiment, regardless whether you're turning on your TV to the news, opening up any of our LinkedIn or our social media platforms, it's everywhere. And so what you're subscribing to will impact how you experience joy. And so I really try to emote positivity in anything that I put out into the world because you can find joy in almost anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really glad that you called that out, Starlee. And I think it aligns with what we're talking about when it comes to choice. The fact that the world that we're in right now and that we see on media, there's the part about people's highlight reel and the sense of comparison. And there's also all of the terrible things that are going on in the world. And I know something that a lot of my coaching clients struggle with is that sentiment of, with everything wrong, how do I feel joy and not feel guilty about it? And what would you advise someone who asked you that?
That's such a great question. If I was thinking about, I would encourage, when I think about not feeling guilty about the circumstance, like what you can do, I look to myself to think, what am I doing? Do a hard look about I'm doing. And I think that people often think about grand gestures. I
Yeah.
need to change the world. I need to um, donate large sums of money, or I need to run large programs. But in fact, it could be a brief conversation. It could be volunteering a couple of hours. It could be lending your voice at a table that maybe doesn't have somebody that looks like you at that table, right? Because maybe there's some assumptions being made. It could look like reaching to your neighbor who might have a difference of opinion, to have those respectful debates, to maybe change perspectives and to build some bridges. And so there are all these small ways to really make a meaningful difference. And it doesn't need to be a highlight reel moment. It can
Hmm.
just be a quiet moment that says, I did something great today. I volunteered at my local food bank to help support the community, right? And these are the small moments that really make a difference, that will help change not only your community, but then I hope, at least for me, it fills me with joy knowing that hopefully change somebody else's perspective.
I think that's really big. I appreciate you saying that because I completely empathize with that sentiment. It gives you joy to help others, right? And I think that being of service, which is very stereotypically Virgo, and I'm obviously huge into astrology. Um, I think that's an important component of joy that's often overlooked. When we look at happiness on social media, happiness is often uh, surrounded by what you get, what you've gotten, what you get to enjoy, right? Whether those are things or, abundance in various forms. And, by no means am I saying there's anything wrong with that. However, I find that I personally receive a lot more joy from giving to others. And I think that's just highly underrated. So I know personally, if I'm having a rough day, Starly, I want to go do something great for someone else. Even if it's like you said, that I'm walking through Dollarama shopping and I'm complimenting someone's outfit as they walk down the aisle. That takes me out of myself. It sort of separates me from the ego because I find deep, dark rabbit holes are usually some sense of woe is me. So it takes me away from that imploding. And, as we've been talking about, puts me back out into community, even if community means complimenting a stranger's outfit in the aisle in the store that I'm shopping in. And that can turn around my day. That's like this tiny little infusion of joy. And, when I'm working with my clients, I'll share things like that with them to say, just like you said, it doesn't need to be the big grand gestures. You don't need to be, completely frustrated that you're not able to do those. It's those tiny little moments that can matter so much for the other person, but also selfishly can really buoy your own spirits too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's so funny because before we started today, you caught me writing down a name because I really and it leads into this is I just finished reading The Serviceberry. And I wrote it down because I did not want to forget the author's name, Robin Wall Kilmer. And so what you just said is exactly what this book is about. It's a really quick read, really highly recommend it. Um, Not a paid endorsement. But anyways, I was gonna say, um, because it talks about the service aspect of give back and how that makes you feel and being of service. And so you said something specific that stood out to me that is in the book and talking about the um, the abundance, the acquiring of a new things of something, where we're in an economy that is all about us, and
Yeah.
rather than a gift economy where we are just giving pieces of ourselves. And so there's a reference in the book about I'm not necessarily freezing things in my freezer, but I'm actually feeding the people in my community because they need it now. And
Hmm.
I don't need to hoard that, whether that is food or wealth or whatever that might look like. I can actually share that with the people who need it currently and
Hmm.
continue to move forward. And so, if you can continue to be of service to somebody, not only do you feel great about yourself and not and humbly enjoy that, but you're also making that person feel great who then does something great for somebody else, and it is a
Fantastic.
circle, right? That
Yes.
reciprocal engagement is, we think we're helping one person, but we're helping the family, their family's family, their friends, their community. Uh, the impact is so much greater than that one compliment, because
Mhm. Exactly.
I'll just give you like one example, and then I'm gonna give back to you.
Oh, of course.
Is that Dollarama example is so perfect. That quick, hey, I noticed your earrings, or hey, by the
Mhm.
way, I love this sweater. Where did you get it? That brief conversation, you don't know that that person maybe struggled with their weight, or their getting ready in the morning, or even leaving their house. And so the fact that they got up and were able to do that, now they're telling their, somebody in their network, that they felt great about that experience. And it makes things look possible. It creates hope out of that joyful moment. And then they can go and do something else, right? They, maybe it took a lot of time for that person to get out of the house, but now you made them feel joy and happy, and now they can go and maybe apply to that job, if we
Mm.
just like take a circle back, right? That maybe they haven't felt confident enough to do. So it really is cyclical, thinking about all of the implications of that one interaction.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. It's like, that tiny pebble being thrown into the water and it just ripples and ripples and ripples, and you have no idea how far that ripple can go. It's incredible, and it's humbling too, to know that you can have that kind of impact, as you said, by complimenting someone's earrings or their sweater. It's really, really big. You just made a very interesting comment, Starly, tying hope to joy. And I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. How do you see those being connected?
Yeah, I think that when I think about happiness, joy, and hope, I think there it's a spectrum in my mind. And I think that happiness is a moment, and joy is the journey, and hope is the connector of all of those things. It's like the roadway that allows you to go from one to the other, because I think that joy creates your ability to hope, um, enables your ability to find joy, right? If you're hopeful, um, and vice versa. Again, going back to the roadway analogy, being able to think about joy, um, allowing you to feel hopeful in a moment where you could feel lost. So I'll go
Yeah.
back to my mother's example, for a moment. And in that moment, there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of uncertainty that surrounded that. But what I got out of those moments was that connection to family. And so, was I happy? No.
Mm.
But I felt joy of being surrounded by so much love, and I was hopeful that we were going to continue to engage in those moments that will bring me moments of happiness, but also continued joy. So seeing
Yeah.
my brother and my sister-in-law, my husband, surround me, my friends, other connections, that hope of knowing that I'm going to continue to foster those relationships, and what we're going to do as a larger community. And so, in one of those moments of joy, of happiness, thinking about, I've shared in with this with you as well, that I have a couple of scholarships in my grandfather's name, and so uh, because I want to remove barriers for those that want to pursue post secondary education. And so in this moment, I thought, what connections do I have to then go and support that for my mom, who was really a unique champion in hindsight in my journey. And so that allowed me to then be hopeful for not just me, but future generations of Indigenous women who get to go and chase their dreams. And so it's just, again, going back to the vision of a circle. Um, it's a bit of a journey in terms of going from that moment of happiness to being hopeful for the future and what that looks like.
It's a beautiful paying it forward. That's creating our own positive karma.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that the other thing that really, stood out to me in this moment, if I go back to my mom for a moment, when I think about that hope and joy, is you can get really stuck in hoping that circumstances are going to change. So this is what I kind of want to. If I go back to both my mom, but also if I think about the career aspects. And sorry, my brain has a couple of things going on in it. But if I think about those two examples in particular, we think about hoping that I'm going to get the call,
Mhm.
hoping that I'm going to, that things are going to turn out differently, hoping that um, I'm going to get the job of my dreams, et cetera, fill in the blank. Hoping I'm going to win the lottery, whatever that is, right? But in the moments of wait, what are you doing? How are you finding joy while you're hoping for this thing, this bigger picture? And so that hope for something that is a little maybe out of reach, you have to find that the joy in that moment to enable you to propel you to get there.
Mm. So joy propels you towards more joy, is what
You
I'm
bet. Yeah.
hearing. So where does gratitude figure into all of this?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I think that I speak about gratitude all the time. I tell people when I meet them for the first time that there are a few things that they need to know about me. One is I um I am very sarcastic, but never mean-spirited. And the second thing that I tell them is I thank people too much. And I thank people too much and show my appreciation almost to the extent where people are like, okay, we get it. You appreciate me. And I almost think it's disingenuous because I share it too much. And I say that because I don't think we do it as a collective enough in the small
Agree.
moments. We
Yep.
think about thanking people for grand gestures, which is if I go back to the thinking about what can I do that will make somebody's highlight reel,
Mhm.
but I don't think about, but you really think about what about the thank you, the moment of gratitude of comment, complimenting somebody in Dollarama, as an example, right? And that moment of gratitude is just as great as the grand gesture. And I think that we need to be showing genuine gratitude, um, that is not necessarily going to make the highlight reel all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a big call out to genuine gratitude not making the highlight reel because there is, the performative gratitude. And I think that, happens on lots of different scales. So I think about it career-wise, it happens in workplaces, for example. It can happen in interpersonal relationships. Definitely something that you can find on social media, "I wanna say thanks to," and it's like, do you really wanna say thanks, or do you just wanna, tell us the thing that you're being spotlighted for kind of thing? And there there's something really powerful in the sincerity of gratitude when it is offered from a genuine and authentic place. Do you find ways of discerning that when people are offering gratitude or even yourself when you're expressing it, you ever catch yourself and think, okay, is this really how I'm feeling? And I'm asking you this as someone who's just told us you offered lots of gratitude, copious amounts of it to the point where people aren't sure sometimes. Do you ever catch yourself and actually think, well, no, maybe I'm just thanking out of habit right now? Or have you ever caught someone else thanking you and thought, you don't really mean that right now? What happens in that moment?
I love this question, Gina. I'm just saying that I'm going to give another analogy. I'm in my analogy era right now.
I'm here for it.
And I think it's really relevant. So I share that that I give away funds to potentially people on the street corner or to people in line who need additional dollars or what have you. And people
Mhm.
often say, well, why do you do that? Because you don't know what they're going to spend that money on. And I say, that's not my responsibility. What my calling was to I had an abundance of something that I wasn't using, that I didn't need in the short term, and
Yeah.
I was giving it into this place. That was my choice. And what they choose to do with it, I don't have control over.
Mhm.
And so if I take that thought process and I give it and I bring it back into this gratitude, I don't think that it matters. And I say that in kind of contradicts what I had said before is whether you mean it or not. I think the thank you, the gratitude, the appreciation, in those moments, it doesn't necessarily matter because it's all about how that person receives it. And so you can give as much gratitude or as little gratitude. Mm, It's how that person will receive it on the other end and what they choose to do with it. And so I could be giving sincere gratitude and that receiver will think she doesn't mean it. Or I could be
Mhm.
giving insincere gratitude and that person could think, oh my goodness, that's the most meaningful gratitude I've ever received. And so I think that me as a human thinking about gatekeeping my gratitude is I can't control how people are going to receive that. And so I know how people can receive my gratitude. It's too much. But I think that the people who I am impacting that need that moment to feel seen and heard in a moment when maybe they're having a day that they feel like it's like the last straw in their day, I'm going to take it as a win. And if 17 people thought that I'm too much, but that one person I changed, I'm going to count it as a win.
That that really lines up. Like, I know, somewhere in there you're saying this may be contradicting something said previously. I actually would argue it's in full alignment because what you just shared, for me, epitomizes the point that it's about the giving. As you said, it's out of your control how it's received. But the spirit in which you've given it. And if that's in a genuine and sincere spirit, you hope that it's received that way. However, you don't have control over it. And I'm also kind of, subtly, tacitly hearing, and I'm not supposed to. That's not something I'm going to waste my time and energy caring about. I'm going to keep giving to the next.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you're absolutely right. Because the intent is uh, the point, and not to belabor this, but the point is you never know how it's going to be received, right? And so it's super important that if I feel that it needs to be that I need to show that appreciation, I'm going to show the appreciation, and it could be in a variety of ways. It could be a quick thank you. It could be written word. It could be a lengthy LinkedIn post. It could be a phone call. It could be whatever that looks like. It for me, it doesn't necessarily even matter the medium. And going back to one more time about big versus small, uh, it doesn't always have to hit the highlight reel.
Yeah. You mentioned something earlier, and I kind of put a post it note in my head. I don't want to forget to come back to it. The gift economy. I've heard that before. I can't say that I know a lot about it, and I'd love if you would enlighten us a bit. Tell us about what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not an expert, honestly, in the gift economy, but I will share it in my reading of the serviceberry in particular. Thinking about changing um, our mindset from from of course the word has escaped me right now, but an abundance consumerism type of mindset
Mm.
to a gift economy. So if we are in a community together, Gina, and I need salt and you need a sweater and I have these skills, right? So we can just share, and both of us are
Yes.
happy. We did not need to, um, and I have excess of something. I don't need to continue to hoard that. I can freely give that to you, which makes you happy. I hope brings you a moment of joy, and then you can repay me in whatever medium you have. It's not required, but if you will then think, "Hey, Starly lent me this. Uh, I have these meatloaves in my fridge. Maybe her family needs a meal this evening." And so, there's an opportunity of reciprocity
Yes.
that I think is important in the gift economy versus I need to collect as much stuff as I can so that I can be ready for the worst days. And
Yeah.
I think that the what
That scarcity.
just
Is that
the scarcity mindset, but what just came to me is in that moment of accumulation,
Hmm.
you're not finding joy, right? You're
Mhm.
thinking, I have to accumulate as many things, again, money, um, items, food, because of a negative planning of what, instead of thinking, what if everything works out perfectly,
Yeah.
and finding hope in things are going to be wonderful, and finding joy in that moment. Somebody who feels joy will give freely
Mm.
of the things that they have in my mind. And so I think that it's really the reciprocity in the gift economy that is super important in my mind is and when you think about that at scale, yes, we're talking about two people here, but if you think about an entire community and all the
Yep.
skills, beautiful skills that people bring to the table, uh, there is just an opportunity for us to grow, not only from a skills perspective, but even whether that is, if we think about community, thinking about buildings, repairs, food security, all of the things that can be gifted in
Mhm.
that reciprocal way, I think is super powerful.
It really is. It's bringing back, last week, I had, Camilla Apong, who's an amazing creative. She's a singer and community builder, and she was describing her move from Toronto to rural Nova Scotia, and when we were speaking about intentionality and community, we touched on this a bit. She was talking about how, in learning to build community with these new neighbors of hers, she and her partner would stock their freezer with extra produce because whatever they were eating was coming off of their land for the most part. And they had more than they knew what to do with of certain things. And it became like a community locker where people could come and, well, I could only eat so many apples in our house, so take some of the extra. And that was gifted. That to me, this is an example of the gift economy that you've just described because it wasn't given with any expectation of a return. And yet, as human natures want to do when you're doing this in a collective and community oriented sense, the reciprocity came in the form of their neighbors saying, "Oh, okay, I'm dropping by for these things. Hey, do you know about the fishing spot that's just about a half a kilometer this way? Like, you can catch so much at just about any time of the year, really plentiful, different species." What? No, we didn't. And she got this amazing information that they could then leverage and diversify their diet or find, better ways to electrify their completely off the grid, cabin in the middle of nowhere. And all of these things were gifted back, that reciprocity, but not expected, and yet so incredibly valuable. And the things I'm talking about are actually, I love these examples because they're intangibles. They're knowledge, the knowledge of where to go and find the fish, of where to go and find the edible berry bushes that way.
Absolutely. I think that that's so interesting. And I think that there's a human aspect that you're touching on is we just do that naturally. And I think that externally, sometimes whether that's media, whether that is some external forces try to tell us or feed us this scarcity mindset,
Mhm.
But human nature says if you're kind to me, I'm kind to you, and we don't need to have this animosity or negativity between us. We want to do the right thing. And I give this great example about lawn cutting. We're coming to the end of the season, and if I cut, we have a shared yard out front, and if I was to cut my neighbor's yard, they automatically will cut my portion the next time, and it's
No.
this shared, and we never spoke about it one time, but it's just an understanding that if we do something, they will do something. And I think it goes back to that human element that sometimes we forget about in the noise of who's right and who's wrong.
Right, and who's going to actually receive the credit for doing that
Yes.
thing? It
Ex-
makes such a huge difference when you're not concerned with who's going to get the credit, but rather just putting the good out into the world.
Absolutely. The credit, that is the key. I think that that is what, now that you just mentioned credit, I think that when I think about joy and happiness, I think that that has a lot to, really plays a huge factor in those moments of joy, is thinking about how is it going to be perceived,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
can I experience this happiness, and who will who will receive credit for my happiness, for this moment, for fill in the blank.
Yep.
Um, I think that that's a huge takeaway.
Yeah. And if we can just make that yeah, a part of the gift itself, is that
Yes.
I'm releasing into the universe, out to the wild, the credit as well. I don't need it. I don't care if someone else gets it. I'm just giving. I think that's part of truly giving freely of yourself.
Yes, yes. With yeah, without expectation, right?
Yeah.
Without expectation. I think that that's amazing.
Oh, I love this. And you know what? I think this is an opportune moment for us to pull a card. What do you think?
I would be so honored for you to pull a card.
Well, thank you. So, if you haven't been here before, folks, I usually pull a tarot card from Yashimoto is the name of the creator of this particular deck, and I love it because it takes the very classical meaning of tarot cards and portrays them through world myths, legends, folklore. So, from all over the place, and I think what it ends up doing is giving a really rich visual as well as background story to the interpretation of what cards are. So, as always, I will shuffle them on camera because I never know what card I'm going to get. And oh, we got one out fast today. See what we've gotten. We got the death card. Now, this, I have to say, is one of the most, misinterpreted, misunderstood cards. People get kind of scared. They see death. The traditional tarot card looks a lot scarier than this, to be honest. And this one, I can't remember where the story is from for this, but there's this kind of a skull in the background there behind the curtain. The thing about the death card, it's actually a card of transformation. And interestingly, oh, I just thought of something because the universe always provides. It is in the major arcana, the card that is correlated to the sign of Scorpio. Guess what today is? The
Oh,
first day of Scorpio season. So, death is about ultimate change and transformation, always for the better. And when I think about the conversation we've had today, this is where I would love to see society, us as a collective, move as a whole, is to go through the transformation from the individualism, the, kind of navel gazing. It's all about me and my ego, and I'm putting my highlight reel on social media so that I look better than everyone else that's going to compare themselves to me, to get out of that into a much more collective mindset, a community oriented mindset. A transformation to that is that would be fantastic. That would be phenomenal to people really, subscribing to and fully engaging with that concept we've been talking about, the gift economy. I think that would be just what I dream of. That's the kind of world that I want to live in. That's what I know. It's kind of what I try and create in my little corner of the earth. And Starrlee, I know that's what you do with Tea with Starrlee.
yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with me. I that was unexpected and honestly a little emotional. I think that I just want to say really quickly, that I think that my mom was channeled here because I did speak about my mom and thinking about that transformation of thought in her passing. I think that was really appropriate. And so when you speak about the transformation of mindset, I think that was really meaningful. So thank you for sharing that with me today.
Oh, absolutely, and thank you for sharing that because Scorpio really it rules the deeper waters, right? The mystical, the gate between the now and the hereafter. And we know, we're recording this, as I said, first day of Scorpio season, so it's October 23rd. We are just a week out from Halloween, All Hallows Eve, when the veil is the most thin between different dimensions and worlds. And so I think, again, that transformation becomes more possible, especially when you have the thinning of that veil and you have more of the influence, I'll say, of people and loved ones that have passed on and are really gifting us. I think that's one of the biggest gift economies is that it can go from generation to generation and it can be passed on and rippled through, not just within families, but in formed families, chosen tribes and communities as well too. So I think this has been just a splendiferous conversation, Starley. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Miigwech. Appreciate you.
Glitch. Thank you so, and thank you to all of you, viewers, listeners, whether you're on Spotify taking this in or on LinkedIn. Excuse me, you might see my ad on LinkedIn, but you'd be taking it on YouTube, perhaps. We really appreciate you stopping by. If you haven't already, please consider following, subscribing, liking, sharing. There might be others in your network, in your community, that could really benefit from a tall, fresh glass of our Curious Coach lemonade that we pour nice and freshly at the stand every other week or so. So until the next time, I bid you all to please be well, take care of one another. Let's start this gift economy. Let's really throw ourselves into it because I think this is what we all need right now to transform this world into the place we really want to live in. Thank you again, Starlee, for being here. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure to discuss these awesome topics with you today. And once again, thanks to everybody.